As the movie starts, we meet Ciro, a shady-looking guy roaming the streets of Buenos Aires. His eyes catch a sleek car, and without hesitation, he breaks into it. Ciro is a professional thug, so he swiftly steals the stereo and snatches a pair of sunglasses from the overhead compartment. But then, an unexpected urge hits him. He needs to pee. Instead of finding a proper place, Ciro unapologetically relieves himself all over the back seat. He even lets out a few intentional farts, just to rub it in. But as Ciro finishes up and tries to leave, he realizes that the door won't open. Panic sets in as he frantically tries every door, but they're all securely shut. Ciro's heart races as he realizes he's in deep trouble. He attempts to break the window, but it's impossible to penetrate. In desperation, he hurts his hand trying to dismantle the door from the inside, causing it to bleed. As Ciro's situation becomes dire, a woman arrives outside the car and starts applying lipstick. Ciro desperately seeks help from the woman, but she seems oblivious to his presence, ignoring his shouts and walking away. With his phone battery dead after failed attempts to contact his wife, Ciro spends a restless night before waking up parched and realizing he's out of water. In a moment of desperation, he resorts to licking condensation off the car window to quench his thirst. As the day drags on, Ciro tries to distract himself by listening to music from his car stereo, removing the car stereo from his backpack. One of his favorite songs begins to play, and he gets lost in its rhythm and lyrics, momentarily forgetting his dire situation. Ironically, the song reflects Ciro's condition, mentioning hazy windows, blood, and feeling trapped. Inspired by the song, Ciro musters up the motivation to try unlocking the car door again as soon as the music ends. Just then, the car stereo rings like a phone, and Ciro answers to a man introducing himself as Dr. Enrique Ferrari. To Ciro's surprise, Enrique owns the SUV and warmly welcomes him inside. Enrique goes on to share that he has been robbed 28 times in his life, adding an unexpected twist to Ciro's already tumultuous ordeal. As Ciro realizes he's the 29th person who's tried to steal from Enrique, his rage boils over and he demands to be set free. But Enrique, unfazed, dismisses Ciro's demands and takes the opportunity to show off his remarkable car. Dubbing it a 4x4, Enrique brags about its cutting-edge security features, like the alarm system linked to his phone that can remotely lock all 4 doors. He boasts about the car's soundproof and bulletproof construction, thanks to its independent suspension that makes it impossible to move from the inside. Even the windows, including the front windscreen, are polarized for added protection. The only weak spot is the gas tank, which can hold a massive 120 liters of fuel, but Enrique ominously warns Ciro that it could also be a potential bomb. Despite their dire circumstances, Enrique opens up to Ciro, sharing that he's a 60-year-old widower from Quilmes and reminiscing about a simpler childhood where doors were never locked in his middle-class family. He longs for those uncomplicated times, contrasting them with his current reality. Testing Ciro's morality, Enrique asks him what he would do if he caught his own son stealing. But Ciro has had enough, and with a firm threat to report Enrique to the authorities, the tension between them reaches a boiling point. In a desperate moment, Ciro goes to extreme lengths and boldly suggests that he could harm Enrique and his entire family if he's released. But before he can finish his fiery rant, the phone abruptly disconnects, leaving Ciro seething with frustration. Meanwhile, Enrique seems to take sadistic pleasure in toying with Ciro. He cranks up the air conditioner to its coldest setting, causing the intruder to shiver uncontrollably. Despite Ciro's attempts to turn off the icy blast, nothing seems to work in the car. With no other options, Ciro reluctantly strips off his shirt to fashion a makeshift bandage for his bleeding knee, a painful reminder of his failed theft attempt. He tears a piece of his pants to staunch the bleeding, gritting his teeth against the pain. As Ciro lies there, weakened and in agony, Enrique calls him again, repeating the same question about how Ciro would handle catching his own child stealing. In a desperate bid for some relief, Ciro responds, hoping to earn a drink of water as promised by Enrique. But to his dismay, Enrique remains dissatisfied with his answer, and Ciro pleads with him to stop, insisting that he's learned his lesson. However, Enrique remains unmoved, recounting another harrowing incident from his past involving his daughter's home being burgled and his grandson being held hostage for hours. But Ciro, in his current frail state, is uninterested in Enrique's stories. Instead, he challenges Enrique on what kind of doctor would deny water to a person in need, before Enrique hangs up, leaving Ciro to ponder what kind of doctor he's dealing with. The tension between them continues to escalate, adding another layer of suspense to the dire situation. As Ciro weighs his options, a glimmer of hope emerges as a police vehicle pulls up alongside the SUV. His heart races with anticipation, but instead of lending a helping hand, the officer slaps him with a ticket and walks away, leaving Ciro crestfallen. The hours drag on, and just when Ciro's throat is parched and his desperation peaks, Enrique contacts him again, demanding personal information in exchange for water. Despite the water's unusual color, Ciro drinks it frantically, grateful for any drop of liquid that can quench his thirst. In the next scene, Ciro is feverish and famished, contemplating eating a bug that has found its way into the car. His leg wound has turned a sickly yellow, and he's in agony. Enrique, in an attempt to comfort Ciro, switches on the air conditioner and reveals his own suffering. He's battling cancer with limited time left to live. But Ciro's weakened state prevents him from fully comprehending, and he eventually succumbs to exhaustion and fever, passing out. When Ciro regains consciousness, a surge of determination courses through him as he musters enough strength to plan his escape. He frantically searches the car handbook for a way out, but his efforts only result in tearing out a page in frustration, which he chews on in desperation. With his situation becoming increasingly dire, Ciro resorts to drinking his own urine to stay alive. Just when all seems lost, a sudden jolt of excitement surges through Ciro as a thief attempts to break into the SUV. Ciro's luck takes a dark turn when he's caught and pummeled by angry locals as he tries to break into the SUV. With night casting its shadow, Ciro's gnawing hunger and parched throat drive him to the brink of delirium. In his fevered state, he reflects on the grotesque inequality that plagues the world, where a select few hoard unimaginable wealth while the rest struggle to scrape by. Frustration ignites a fire within him as he curses the systems and laws that perpetuate this disparity, favoring the privileged and dooming the rest to poverty. But even in the face of dire circumstances, Ciro remains steadfast in his resolve not to bow down to the system, willing to risk his life as a thief, just like his father and grandfather. A glimmer of hope flickers the next day when Enrique calls again, his voice laced with amusement as he reads the newspaper to Ciro. He reveals a hidden chocolate bar in the SUV, a small comfort that briefly lifts Ciro's spirits after a day of feeling powerless. Determination surges through him as he springs into action, striking the damaged door with all his might, painstakingly carving out a tiny hole that exposes him to the outside world. He cries out desperately through the minuscule aperture, hoping against hope to catch someone's attention, but his pleas fall on deaf ears. Enrique's call cuts through the silence once more, but this time the tone is grave. Ciro's heart clenches as he hears his family's name, tears blurring his vision as he begs Enrique not to harm them. He's consumed by the question of why he deserves such punishment, haunted by his past crimes, including a botched burglary that resulted in taking a life and a brutal assault on an elderly bus driver. Ciro, shirking responsibility, points fingers at the driver for ruining his plan to loot the passengers. With his phone juiced up from solar power, Ciro attempts to reach his wife but comes up short, leaving a heartfelt voicemail laden with remorse for his past wrongdoings. Determined, he keeps pressing the car's start button and astonishingly manages to ignite the engine without a key, using a secret pattern. Buckling up, Ciro shifts into reverse, only to find the gear stubbornly locked in reverse mode, forcing him to drive in reverse. Taking a daring leap to grab attention, he floors it and slams the car into a post, but luckily the airbag deploys just in time, sparing him from harm. Despite the pain, Ciro summons every ounce of strength to shatter the weakened back glass and heads towards a nearby gas station restaurant in search of sustenance. However, the manager's rude insistence on immediate payment and departure ignites Ciro's anger, fueling his fury. In a reckless rage, he brandishes his gun and fires at the manager. In an instant, Ciro snaps back to reality, realizing it was all just a daydream, and he remains trapped in the SUV. His phone rings again, and it's Enrique on the line. Desperate, Ciro resorts to drastic measures, but Enrique remains unmoved by his words, unyielding in his stance. With a maniacal grin spreading across his face, Enrique finally reveals himself as he approaches the car, immediately tending to Ciro's injuries as he slips into the vehicle. Exhausted and drained of energy, Ciro succumbs to sleep, but upon awakening, he musters all his courage, gripping his gun tightly and taking a shot at Enrique. The bullet narrowly misses, but Ciro seizes the opportunity to leap out of the car, finally breaking free from days of excruciating captivity. Crawling on the floor, firing shots into the air, Ciro fights desperately for his escape, with Enrique hot on his heels, relentless in his pursuit. However, their commotion does not go unnoticed as a vigilant police officer arrives, demanding that Enrique drop his weapon. When the cunning doctor defies the order, an intense standoff ensues. Fast forward 2 hours, and the scene is now a chaotic spectacle with a gathering crowd of people, media personnel, and cops. Despite fervent pleas from all sides to surrender, Enrique remains resolute, holding Ciro at gunpoint. As tensions soar, an experienced negotiator steps in, taking command of the situation. With the entire country watching on, the negotiator confronts Enrique, probing him for his demands. The doctor begins to lay out the daily struggles he faces, passionately highlighting the government's failures in addressing them, captivating the attention of the nation. With fervor in his voice, he vividly describes the daily challenges he faces, dodging piles of dog excrement left by irresponsible pet owners, grappling with clogged drains, navigating through littered garbage on the roads, and witnessing the dire state of the homeless population. He doesn't shy away from addressing the urgent issue of deforestation either. As Enrique passionately shares his grievances, the public quickly rallies behind him, wholeheartedly supporting his cause. Despite the negotiator's unwavering efforts, Enrique eventually agrees to release Ciro. However, he catches everyone off guard when he gets into his car and sets off a timer, triggering a catastrophic explosion that claims his own life. Miraculously, no innocent bystanders are harmed. As Ciro is rushed to the hospital, the movie comes to a close, leaving the general public to grapple with the question of whether the seemingly cold-hearted doctor was, in fact, the true hero of this compelling story.